January 2026. The Caribbean Sea looks exactly how Washington wants it to look. U.S. Navy destroyers form layered patrol lines. A carrier strike group loiters just beyond the horizon. Maritime patrol aircraft sweep the sea surface day and night. Officially, it's a security operation. Unofficially, it's a blockade. The objective is simple: isolate Venezuela, choke military resupply, and force compliance without a costly ground invasion. For decades, this formula worked. Control the sea, and you control the outcome. But this time, something is slipping through the net. At first, it's just anomalies. Venezuelan air defenses remain operational longer than expected. Missile batteries that should have gone silent are still radiating. Radar sites thought to be starving for spare parts keep rotating crews. Intelligence analysts notice a pattern that doesn't make sense. No cargo aircraft are landing, no merchant ships are breaking the blockade, and yet Venezuelan forces are not degrading, they're stabilizing. That's when U.S. naval planners begin asking a question that changes the entire operation. How is Venezuela being resupplied? The answer isn't on the surface, it's below it. Russia's underwater drone network has entered the war. This is not science fiction, and it's not a one-off experiment. Over the past decade, Russia has quietly invested in unmanned underwater vehicles, UUVs, designed for long-range autonomous operations. Originally developed for seabed mapping, pipeline inspection, and undersea surveillance, these platforms evolved into something far more strategic. Modular payload bays, long endurance, ultra-quiet electric propulsion, navigation systems that don't rely on GPS. By 2026, Russia isn't just testing underwater drones, it's deploying them as logistical weapons. Unlike submarines, these systems don't need crews. Unlike surface ships, they don't trigger radar alerts. They don't broadcast AIS signals. They don't look like anything a blockade is designed to stop. They simply disappear beneath the thermocline and move. Satellite imagery shows nothing. Sonar coverage is patchy in the Caribbean's complex acoustic environment. The seabed is cluttered with commercial traffic noise, geological features, and decades of undersea infrastructure. This is exactly the kind of environment where autonomous underwater systems thrive. Russian engineers designed these drones to exploit it. The resupply method is brutally efficient. Large UUVs depart from civilian ports, auxiliary vessels, or even submerged launch cradles deployed weeks earlier. Once underwater, they navigate autonomously toward Venezuelan coastal waters. Some carry sealed containers with missile components, electronics, and spare parts. Others carry fuel bladders or encrypted data modules. Smaller drones act as scouts, mapping patrol patterns and acoustic signatures of U.S. ships in real time. This is logistics without ships, supply lines without convoys, and it's happening beneath the most powerful navy on Earth. U.S. commanders are trained to counter submarines. They are not optimized to counter swarms of small, low-signature underwater drones operating independently. Traditional anti-submarine warfare assumes targets that must surface, communicate, or resupply. These drones do none of that. They don't care about crew fatigue, they don't need air, they don't panic, and they don't defect. When the first hard evidence appears, it's almost accidental. A Venezuelan coastal patrol recovers an unidentified underwater container washed ashore after a storm. Inside are sealed electronic modules compatible with Russian air defense systems. Serial numbers trace back to manufacturers already under sanctions. There was no ship, no aircraft, no detectable transfer. The conclusion is unavoidable. The blockade has been bypassed. This forces a rapid reassessment in Washington. Naval dominance has always been an asymmetric advantage. The idea that a hostile power can sustain a partner state under naval pressure without surface access breaks a foundational assumption of U.S. power projection. Blockades don't fail because ships get through. They fail because supply becomes impossible. Until now.
Russia understands something NATO planners have underestimated for years. Future warfare isn't about breaking through defenses. It's about going around them, under them, through domains the enemy doesn't fully control. Underwater drones are perfect for this role. They're cheap compared to warships, disposable compared to submarines, and politically deniable. If one is discovered, there's no crew to capture, no flag to point to, no escalation trigger, just another piece of unidentified debris. For Venezuela, the impact is immediate. Air defense readiness remains high, radar networks stay integrated, missile stocks don't collapse, electronic warfare systems continue operating. From the outside, it looks like resilience. On the inside, it's resupply, slow, steady, invisible. For the U.S. Navy, it's a nightmare scenario. Expanding anti-submarine operations across the entire Caribbean is not feasible. The cost is astronomical, the assets are limited, and every destroyer hunting drones is a destroyer not protecting the carrier or enforcing the surface blockade. The geometry of the problem favors the defender. Even worse, the drones don't need to move constantly. Russia pre-positioned many of them months earlier, before the crisis escalated. Seabed caches, autonomous docking nodes, underwater rendezvous points. By the time the blockade began, the supply network was already in place. This isn't just about Venezuela, it's a demonstration. Russia is sending a message. Maritime dominance no longer guarantees strategic control. You can own the surface and still lose the supply war. That message is being watched closely, not just by NATO, but every country vulnerable to naval pressure. Iran notices, China notices, smaller states notice most of all. The implications ripple outward. If underwater drones can resupply Venezuela, they can resupply any coastal state under blockade. Taiwan, Iran, Syria, even future conflicts no one has named yet. The ocean, once a barrier, becomes a highway. U.S. officials publicly downplay the impact. Privately, doctrine reviews are underway. New funding requests appear for seabed sensors, autonomous ASW platforms, and underwater domain awareness. But these are long-term fixes. The Venezuela operation is happening now, and the political cost is rising. Every day the blockade fails to produce results, undermines its credibility. Allies ask uncomfortable questions. Adversaries draw dangerous conclusions. If the U.S. cannot fully isolate a regional power in its own hemisphere, what does that say about enforcement elsewhere? Russia, meanwhile, achieves strategic effect without deploying a single soldier. No bases, no flags, no open confrontation, just technology, planning, and patience. This is modern power projection, indirect, deniable, and asymmetric. There's another layer to this strategy that worries NATO even more. Underwater drones don't just carry cargo, they collect data. Acoustic profiles of U.S. ships, patrol routes, sonar patterns, communication emissions. Every resupply run doubles as an intelligence mission. Venezuela becomes a live testing ground for underwater warfare against Western navies. By the time U.S. analysts realize the full scope of what's happening, the lesson is already written. Blockades belong to the 20th century. Autonomous logistics belong to the 21st. The U.S. can still apply pressure. It can still strike. It can still escalate. But the clean, controlled operation Washington envisioned is gone. The cost curve has shifted. The certainty is gone. Russia didn't break the blockade head-on. It made it irrelevant. This is what the future of warfare looks like. Not massive fleets clashing on the surface, but invisible systems operating below detection thresholds. Not decisive battles, but sustained pressure through domains the enemy can't fully dominate. The Venezuela crisis will eventually end, one way or another, but the precedent will remain. Naval power is no longer absolute. Control of the seas is no longer enough. And every military planner watching this unfold understands the same uncomfortable truth. The next war won't be lost because the enemy was stronger, but because they were harder to see. If you want daily breakdowns of the hidden technologies and strategies reshaping global power in real time, subscribe now and hit the bell. New analysis every single day.